My brother stole my car and accidentally crashed it. He started mocking me online, but I sued him and was awarded $170,000. So, I'm Noah, a 32-year-old guy who's finally made it. I'm not talking about millions in the bank or some flashy mansion. No, for me, it's my dream car, a sleek black 1967 Ford Mustang GT 500. I've been obsessed with this car since I was a kid, plastering posters on my bedroom walls, collecting die-cast models, and even convincing my dad to take me to car shows just so I could see one in real life. It wasn't easy getting here. After college, I took a low-paying IT job and worked my way up while living on ramen and secondhand furniture. I skipped vacations, fancy dinners, and any luxury that wasn't an absolute necessity. I wasn't just saving money. I was laser-focused. For over a decade, I passed up every temptation so I could afford this car. Not just any Mustang, but the Mustang. And last month, I finally bought it. The day I picked up the car was surreal. I'd bought it from a collector in a nearby city, a guy named Paul who had more cars than I could count. He kept the Mustang in pristine condition, stored in a climate-controlled garage. When I walked into his garage and saw it gleaming under the fluorescent lights, my heart skipped a beat. I mean, this car was perfect. The deep black paint looked like liquid, and the chrome accents were polished to a mirror shine. Paul handed me the keys and said, "Take care of her. She's got a soul." I almost laughed, but the way he looked at me, I realized he was dead serious. I drove it home that day, my hands gripping the leather steering wheel like it was a lifeline. Every rumble of the engine sent a thrill through me. It was everything I'd ever imagined, and more. I parked it in my garage, and for hours, I just sat there admiring it, running my hands along the bodywork and marveling at how far I'd come to make this moment real. A week later, I took the Mustang out for a long drive. It was late on a Sunday, and the roads were nearly empty. I cruised along winding country lanes, the engine purring like a contented beast. For a moment, it felt like I'd escaped all the stress and grind of life. That's when it happened. Out of nowhere, a pickup truck came barreling down the wrong side of the road. I swerved hard to avoid it, the tires screeching against the asphalt. The Mustang spun, and I ended up skidding into a ditch. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking as I checked for damage. Luckily, I was fine, and so was the car, at least, as far as I could tell. The pickup truck, though, didn't stop. It sped off, leaving me stranded in the dark. I called a tow truck and waited, standing in the cold with my dream car stuck in the mud. When the tow truck driver, a gruff guy named Rick, arrived, he said, "You're lucky, kid. This could have been a lot worse." The next day, I couldn't shake the incident. Why was that truck driving so recklessly? I went back to the scene and found something strange, a shattered side mirror lying in the ditch. It didn't belong to my car, so it had to be from the truck. I took it as a clue and decided to dig deeper. I went to the local police station and reported the hit and run. The officer on duty, a sharp-eyed woman named Detective Harper, listened carefully. She said, "Leave the mirror with us. We'll see if we can match it to any local vehicles." A few days later, Harper called me back. "We found the truck," she said. "It belongs to a guy named Mike, a repeat offender with DUIs on his record." I felt a mix of relief and anger. "So, what happens now?" "He's denying everything," Harper said. "Claims he wasn't driving that night." "We're investigating." While the police worked the case, I started noticing strange things. A few times, I caught glimpses of a man watching my house from across the street. He was always in different vehicles, sometimes an old sedan, sometimes a motorcycle, but it was definitely the same guy. One night, I decided to confront him. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside, my heart pounding. As I approached his car, he sped off, tires screeching. The next morning, I found a note stuck under my windshield wiper. It read, "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." I took the note to Detective Harper, who looked genuinely concerned. "This isn't just about the accident anymore," she said. "You might have stumbled onto something bigger." What could possibly be bigger? All I wanted was my car, my peace. But now, it felt like my dream had turned into a nightmare. A few days later, someone broke into my garage. They didn't steal anything, but they trashed the place. ripped open boxes, scattered tools, and even keyed the Mustang. The sight of that scratch along the side of my car was like a punch to the gut. I installed security cameras and doubled down on precautions. One night, the cameras caught someone sneaking around the garage again. This time, I was ready. I grabbed a baseball bat and confronted the intruder, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek. He froze when he saw me, then bolted. I chased him, adrenaline pumping, but he was fast. I managed to grab his jacket, and he slipped out of it, leaving me holding a wallet he'd left in the pocket. Inside was his ID. His name was Sean, and he was connected to Mike, the owner of the pickup truck. I handed the wallet over to Harper, who dug into Sean's background. It turned out he and Mike were part of a local gang involved in stolen car rings. My Mustang wasn't just a dream car to me. It was a high-value target to them. They probably didn't expect you to fight back, Harper said. But now they're spooked. I didn't care about their fears. I just wanted this nightmare to end. This is where things stood. My dream car, my sanctuary, had become a magnet for chaos. And even though I'd worked so hard to achieve it, I was starting to wonder if it was worth all this trouble. But giving up wasn't an option, not after everything I'd sacrificed to get here. I was determined to protect my dream, no matter what it took. Family gatherings have always been chaotic in my family. It's not that we don't get along, we do. But when you put 30 people with wildly different personalities in one room, things are bound to get messy. Last weekend, my mom insisted I bring the Mustang to the barbecue at my uncle's house. She wanted to show off how well her son was doing. I wasn't thrilled about the idea. The car was my pride and joy, and letting it sit unattended in a driveway full of people who couldn't care less about respecting someone else's property didn't sit well with me. But I gave in. It's hard to say no to Mom. Uncle Rick's backyard was already buzzing when I arrived. Kids were running around, screaming and laughing. Adults stood in clusters, balancing paper plates piled with food. And then there was Ben. My cousin, 3 years younger than me, had a reputation. He was the guy who showed up late, drank too much, and turned every situation into a minor disaster. I hadn't seen him in a while, but his reputation had stayed fresh in everyone's minds. As soon as I pulled into the driveway, Ben was the first to greet me. He whistled loudly, drawing everyone's attention to the car. "Damn, Noah, look at you, man," he shouted, slapping the roof of the Mustang as if it were a clunker instead of a classic. My jaw clenched, but I forced a smile. "Yeah, thanks. Just got it a few weeks ago. You gotta let me drive it," Ben said, his eyes wide with excitement. I shook my head firmly. "Not a chance." Come on," he said, half laughing. "What's the point of having a car like this if you're not gonna share?" I ignored him and went to greet the rest of the family, hoping he'd get the hint and drop it. For most of the afternoon, things were fine. I kept my keys in my pocket, made sure the car was locked, and stayed close enough to keep an eye on it. Ben, to his credit, seemed occupied with the keg and a game of cornhole. At some point, though, I lost track of him. It wasn't until I heard the unmistakable roar of the Mustang's engine that my heart sank. I spun around, and there it was, my car speeding down the street with Ben behind the wheel. My stomach turned as I watched him swerve, narrowly avoiding a parked car. I sprinted to the driveway, yelling after him like an idiot. My mom rushed over, panic etched across her face. "What's going on?" "Ben," I shouted. He took the car. The next 20 minutes were a blur. I was pacing, furious and terrified, while my Uncle Rick tried to call Ben. The phone kept going to voicemail. "This is bad," Rick muttered. "Real bad." Then came the call. A stranger's voice on the other end of the line informed me that my car was involved in an accident a few miles away. My chest tightened. "Is Ben okay?" I asked, my voice shaking. "He's alive," the man said, "but you need to get here now." I drove with Rick in his truck, my thoughts racing as fast as my heartbeat. When we arrived at the scene, it was worse than I imagined. The Mustang was smashed against a tree, the front end crumpled like a soda can. The sight made me want to throw up. Ben was sitting on the curb, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. He looked dazed but alive. A cop was standing over him, clearly frustrated. "This your car?" The officer barked at me as I approached. "Yes," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. And that's my cousin. He took it without my permission. Ben looked up at me, his expression a mix of guilt and defiance. I was just trying to take it for a spin, he mumbled. I didn't think. Exactly. I snapped. You didn't think. The officer intervened before I could say more. We're going to need a statement from you, he said. And him. The next hour was a blur of questions, paperwork, and sheer frustration. Ben was taken to the hospital for a checkup, and the Mustang was towed to a nearby lot. Standing there, watching the tow truck haul away the wreckage of my dream car, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. This car wasn't just a vehicle. It was the result of years of hard work and sacrifice. And in one impulsive moment, Ben had ruined it. Back at Uncle Rick's house, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew what had happened, and no one wanted to talk about it. My mom tried to console me, but her words felt hollow. At least he's okay, she said softly. I nodded, but the truth was, I didn't care about Ben at that moment. I cared about my car. The next day, I went to see the Mustang at the lot. The damage was extensive. Front axle bent, hood crumpled, engine likely compromised. The insurance adjuster's expression said it all. This is going to be expensive to fix, he said. I couldn't even look at the car without feeling sick. All I could think about was how easily this could have been avoided if Ben had just respected my boundaries. But Ben didn't do boundaries. He never had. Later that week, he showed up at my door. His arm was in a sling, and he looked genuinely sorry. Noah, man, I don't know what to say. I screwed up. I stared at him, trying to decide if I even wanted to hear his apology. Do you have any idea what you've done? I said finally. That car was everything to me. I know, he said, his voice cracking. I was stupid. I'll make it right. I swear. How? I demanded. Do you have 50 grand lying around to fix it? Ben looked away, his face pale. I'll figure it out. Just, please don't hate me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. All I felt was a crushing sense of loss, not just for the car, but for the trust that had been shattered. Ben wasn't just my cousin. He was family. And now, I didn't know if I could ever forgive him. For now, the Mustang sits in the repair shop, waiting for me to figure out what to do next. Every time I think about it, a part of me wants to scream. But another part of me wonders if this is just another test, a way to see how much I'm willing to fight for the things I love. When I brought the Mustang to my Uncle Rick's barbecue, I never thought it would lead to one of the biggest rifts in my family. The accident itself was devastating, but what came after, when everyone started picking sides, was almost worse. The day after the crash, I got a call from Aunt Linda, Ben's mom. I was expecting her to apologize on his behalf, to show some kind of remorse for what her son had done. Instead, she started the conversation with, Noah, don't you think you're blowing this out of proportion? I was so stunned I couldn't even respond at first. Blowing it out of proportion? I finally managed to say, he stole my car and totaled it. How am I supposed to react? Look, Linda said. Her tone clipped. Ben didn't mean any harm. It was just a joke. You know how he is. He's impulsive. He didn't think it through. A joke? I said, my voice rising. A joke is hiding someone's car keys, not taking their car and wrecking it. Do you even understand how much damage he's done? Linda sighed heavily. I know it's bad, but it's not like he did it on purpose. He's already beating himself up over it. Do you really need to make things worse? I hung up on her. I couldn't deal with it. This wasn't just about the car. It was about respect. And apparently, some people in my family didn't think I deserved any. That weekend, my mom decided to host a family meeting to clear the air. I didn't want to go, but she insisted. If we don't talk this out, it's just going to fester, she said. When I arrived at her house, the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Most of the family was there. My cousins, aunts, uncles, even a few second cousins who usually didn't bother showing up to family events. Ben sat on the couch with his arms still in a sling, looking like a kicked puppy. Aunt Linda was perched next to him, her arms crossed and her expression defensive. As soon as I walked in, Uncle Rick stood up. All right, let's get this started, he said. Noah, we all know you're upset, and you have every right to be. But I think we need to hear both sides of this. Hear both sides, I said, incredulous. What side is there to hear? Ben stole my car, crashed it, and now I'm out thousands of dollars. I didn't steal it, Ben mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I borrowed it. Borrowed it? I snapped. You didn't ask. That's not borrowing. That's stealing. Okay, okay, Aunt Linda interjected. Can we please not use words like stealing? It was a mistake, Noah. A stupid, impulsive mistake. Exactly, my cousin Sarah chimed in. Ben didn't mean to crash it. He was just trying to have a little fun. Don't act like you've never done something dumb. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This isn't about doing something dumb, I said. This is about the fact that he had no respect for me or my property. And now I'm the one stuck dealing with the consequences. Maybe if you hadn't flaunted the car so much, he wouldn't have been tempted, Linda said, her voice sharp. That hit a nerve. Are you serious right now? I said, my voice shaking with anger. I worked for over a decade to buy that car. I wasn't flaunting it. I was proud of it. And now it's destroyed because your son couldn't keep his hands to himself. At that point, my Uncle Mike, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Linda, you're out of line. Noah has every right to be upset. If this were Ben's car, you'd be losing your mind. Linda glared at him. It's easy for you to say, Mike. Your kids aren't perfect either. Don't drag my kids into this, Mike shot back. We're talking about Ben and what he did. And frankly, he's lucky Noah hasn't pressed charges. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, everyone talking over each other. Some were on my side, agreeing that Ben's actions were reckless and unacceptable. Others, like Sarah and Linda, kept insisting that it wasn't a big deal and that I needed to let it go. In the middle of all this, my grandmother, who rarely spoke at these gatherings, raised her hand for silence. Enough, she said, her voice firm. This arguing is getting us nowhere. The fact is, Ben made a mistake, a big one, and Noah has every right to be angry. But we're family, and we need to find a way to move forward. Move forward? I said bitterly. How am I supposed to move forward when half the family thinks I'm the bad guy for being upset? No one thinks you're the bad guy, my mom said, trying to mediate. We're just saying that holding on to anger isn't going to fix anything. Then what will? I asked. Because right now, all I see is a totaled car and a cousin who refuses to take responsibility. Ben finally spoke up. I'll pay for it, he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. I don't know how yet, but I'll figure it out, he continued. I know I messed up and I'm sorry. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Linda put a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to do that, Ben. It was an accident. Yes, he does, I said firmly. If he's really sorry, he'll find a way to make it right. The meeting ended without any real resolution. Some of my relatives gave me sympathetic looks as they left, while others avoided me entirely. Linda didn't say goodbye. Over the next few weeks, the divide in the family became even more apparent. Uncle Mike and his family checked in on me regularly, offering their support. Sarah, on the other hand, started posting passive-aggressive comments on Facebook about people who hold grudges over material things. At one point, my mom tried to organize another gathering to smooth things over, but I refused to go. I'm not sitting in a room with people who think I should just roll over and let this go, I told her. Eventually, Ben did start making payments toward the repairs, though they were small and sporadic. I appreciated the gesture, but it didn't erase the damage, either to my car or to our family. Every time I saw Linda or Sarah at a family event, there was an unspoken tension between us, a rift that couldn't be bridged. When I thought things couldn't get any worse after the family feud over Ben wrecking my Mustang, the situation took an even uglier turn. I was trying to focus on fixing the car and repairing what little remained of my sanity when Ben, the same cousin who had already caused so much chaos, decided to escalate things in the most immature way possible. Social media. It started on a quiet Monday morning. I was sitting at my desk, going through emails when my phone buzzed with a notification. My friend Adam had tagged me in a post. Curious, I opened it, and my stomach dropped. There it was, a photo of my totaled Mustang, the front end smashed against a tree. Ben had uploaded it to Instagram with the caption, Who knew Noah's midlife crisis would end so quickly? Guess the car couldn't handle his ego. I felt a surge of anger and embarrassment. It wasn't just the fact that Ben posted the photo. It was the mocking tone. The Mustang wasn't just a car to me. It represented over a decade of hard work and sacrifice. And now, my failure to protect it was public entertainment. Within minutes, the post started gaining traction. Ben's friends and some of our mutual acquaintances were commenting with laughing emojis and sarcastic remarks like, "Next time, maybe stick to a bicycle." Others were tagging me, asking if it was true and whether I'd seen the post. It felt like a slap in the face. I called Ben immediately. He didn't pick up, so I texted him, "What the hell are you doing? Take that post down now." His reply came a few minutes later. "Relax, it's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." I couldn't believe it. After everything he'd done, stealing the car, wrecking it, dividing the family, he had the audacity to mock me publicly and then act like I was overreacting. I wanted to drive over to his place and confront him, but I knew I'd probably say or do something I'd regret. Instead, I called my cousin Sarah, who was usually quick to defend Ben. "Did you see what he posted?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated. "Yeah, I saw it. And you're okay with that?" "It's just Ben being Ben," she said with a shrug in her tone. "You know he doesn't think before he acts. Honestly, maybe you should just laugh it off. It's not like he's wrong. It's just a car." That was the last thing I needed to hear. "It's not just a car," I snapped. "And this isn't funny. He's humiliating me in front of everyone." "Well, maybe if you stopped acting so uptight about the whole thing, people wouldn't find it so entertaining," she said before hanging up. I was seething. It felt like no matter what Ben did, there were always people willing to excuse his behavior. I decided to take the high road, or at least what I thought was the high road, and ignored the post, hoping it would blow over. It didn't. The next day, Ben doubled down. He posted a series of Instagram stories featuring the wrecked Mustang, each with increasingly mocking captions. Noah's 10-year savings plan. 1. Save every penny. 2. Buy dream car. 3. Wreck it in 1 week. One of the stories even had a poll asking his followers, should Noah quit cars for good? The options were yes and hell yes. Asterisk. By now, my phone was blowing up with messages from friends, co-workers, and even distant relatives. Some were sympathetic, but others were clearly enjoying the drama. My boss, Mark, even pulled me aside at work. "Hey, I don't want to pry," he said, "but is everything okay? I saw something about your car on Instagram. It was humiliating." I couldn't even escape the situation at the office. That night, I decided I couldn't let this go on any longer. I drove to Ben's apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When he opened the door, he looked surprised to see me. "Noah, what's up, man?" he said, grinning like nothing was wrong. "What's up?" I said, my voice cold. "Are you serious right now, Ben? You've turned my life into a joke for your followers. Do you even realize how much damage you've done?" He rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on. It's just social media. No one's taking it seriously." "I'm taking it seriously," I shouted. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone we know. You've crossed every line. And for what? Likes? Comments?" His grin faltered, but he still tried to brush me off. "Look, if it bothers you that much, I'll take the posts down, but you need to chill. People aren't going to remember this in a week." "I don't care about a week from now," I said. "You've made it clear you don't respect me, my property, or my feelings. I don't even know why I'm still talking to you." For the first time, Ben seemed genuinely taken aback. "What do you want from me, Noah?" I said I'd pay for the repairs. "What else do you want?" "I want you to grow up," I said. "And until that happens, don't talk to me." I left before he could respond. For the next few days, I avoided social media entirely. I didn't want to see what else Ben might post or read any more comments from people who thought my misery was funny. I focused on work and the slow, painful process of getting the Mustang repaired. Then, something unexpected happened. A few of Ben's posts went viral, attracting attention from people outside our circle. At first, it was more of the same, strangers laughing at my expense. But as more people saw the posts, the tone started to shift. Some commenters began calling Ben out for his behavior, accusing him of being immature and cruel. One comment in particular caught my eye. "This guy worked for 10 years to buy his dream car, and you wrecked it and mocked him? What kind of cousin are you?" Others chimed in. "This isn't funny. It's just mean. You're lucky he hasn't sued you for the damages." For the first time, Ben was on the receiving end of the backlash. He deleted the posts and went silent on social media for a while, but the damage was already done. The story had taken on a life of its own, spreading across different platforms. Some people even started tagging me in their posts, offering words of support. It was a small consolation, but it felt good to know that not everyone thought I was overreacting. Eventually, Ben reached out to me. He showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking more subdued than I'd ever seen him. "Noah," he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "I messed up. Again. And I'm sorry." I didn't say anything, waiting for him to continue. "I took the post down," he said. "And I know that doesn't fix anything, but I didn't think. I thought it was funny, and I didn't realize how much I was hurting you." "That's the problem, Ben," I said. "You never think. And I'm always the one left cleaning up your messes." He nodded, looking genuinely ashamed. "You're right. I don't know how to make this right, but I want to try." I didn't forgive him right away. It's hard to forgive someone who's caused you so much pain, especially when they keep making the same mistakes. But I told him that if he was serious about making amends, he could start by paying off the repairs and staying out of my life until he learned some respect. Ben's public bullying left scars, not just on my pride, but on our relationship. I don't know if things will ever go back to the way they were, but at least now I know where we stand. And as for the Mustang, it's still in the shop, but one day, it'll be back on the road, stronger, like me. After everything Ben had done, wrecking my car, mocking me on social media, and dividing the family, I knew I had no other choice but to take him to court. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. Ben needed to learn that actions have consequences, and I wasn't going to let him off the hook this time. Deciding to sue wasn't easy. I knew it would create even more tension in the family, but things were already fractured beyond repair. Half of my relatives thought Ben was an irresponsible fool who needed to face the consequences of his actions. The other half, led by Aunt Linda, kept insisting that it was just a mistake and that I was blowing things out of proportion. I had to make the hard choice. My dream car, my pride and joy, had been destroyed because of Ben's reckless behavior, and his hollow apologies and sporadic promises to pay weren't enough to make up for the damage. I started by consulting a lawyer. My friend Adam recommended Marcus, a no-nonsense attorney with a reputation for being thorough and relentless. During our first meeting, Marcus listened intently as I explained the situation. He nodded along, taking notes as I described everything. How Ben had stolen my car, wrecked it, and then turned the whole thing into a public joke on social media. "You've got a strong case," Marcus said when I finished. "We'll go after him for the full cost of the damages, including repairs, diminished value, and emotional distress. The social media posts will actually help your case. They show a lack of remorse." Hearing the word theft made me pause. I hadn't thought of it in those terms before, but that's exactly what it was. Ben had stolen my car, and it was time to hold him accountable. Word spread quickly once the lawsuit was filed. Aunt Linda called me in tears, accusing me of tearing the family apart. She pleaded with me to drop the case, saying that Ben didn't mean to wreck the car and that he was already sorry for what he'd done. "This isn't just about the car," I told her. "It's about respect. Ben needs to learn that he can't just do whatever he wants without consequences." Linda didn't take it well. "You're being heartless, Noah. He's your cousin." I hung up, exhausted and frustrated. My mom tried to play peacemaker, but even she admitted that Ben had crossed too many lines. "You're doing what you have to do," she told me. "It's not like he left you any other choice." Preparation for the case was intense. Marcus left no stone unturned, gathering every piece of evidence we could use. The police report from the night of the accident, photos of the Mustang's damage, screenshots of Ben's mocking Instagram posts, and even text messages from him admitting he'd taken the car without permission. All of it was meticulously compiled into a strong case. The repair shop's estimate for the damage came to over $40,000. On top of that, Marcus calculated the diminished value of the car. Even if the repairs were done perfectly, a classic Mustang with a history of major damage would never be worth as much as one in pristine condition. Then there was the compensation for emotional distress. Marcus believed we had a solid argument there, especially given the public humiliation Ben had caused with his social media antics. The weeks leading up to the court date were tense. My family was more divided than ever. Uncle Mike, who had been on my side from the beginning, called to offer his support. "It's about time someone held Ben accountable," he said. "If Linda had been tougher on him when he was younger, maybe this wouldn't have happened." But others, like Sarah, doubled down on defending Ben. She posted vague but pointed messages on Facebook, calling me out for being materialistic and petty. It stung, but I knew I couldn't let their opinions sway me. The court date arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and determination as I walked into the courtroom. Ben was there with his lawyer, Jason, a slick guy who looked far too confident for my liking. Aunt Linda sat behind them, her arms crossed and her expression icy. On my side were my mom, Uncle Mike, and Adam, who said he wouldn't miss the showdown for anything. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, got straight to the point. Marcus presented our case first, methodically laying out all the evidence. He described how Ben had taken the car without my permission, driven recklessly, and caused significant financial and emotional harm. He even played a slideshow of Ben's Instagram posts, each caption more mocking than the last. The judge's expression grew colder with each slide. When it was Ben's turn, his lawyer tried to downplay the situation. Jason argued that it wasn't theft but a misunderstanding between family members. He painted Ben as a well-meaning but impulsive young man who had made a mistake. Ben took the stand and repeated the same excuses. "I didn't mean to wreck the car," he said. "I just wanted to take it for a quick drive. I thought Noah would understand." Marcus wasn't having it. "Do you think your social media posts mocking him showed any understanding?" he asked pointedly. Ben didn't have an answer. He just looked down at his hands, clearly uncomfortable. After hours of arguments and testimony, the judge finally delivered her ruling. She sided with me, ordering Ben to pay the full cost of the damages, including repairs, diminished value, and emotional distress. The total came to just over $60,000. Hearing the verdict was a mix of relief and vindication. For the first time in months, I felt like justice had been served. But the victory came at a cost. Aunt Linda stormed out of the courtroom without speaking to me, and Sarah posted a long rant on Facebook that evening, calling me cruel and accusing me of ruining Ben's life. Despite the backlash from some family members, others reached out to show their support. Uncle Mike called to congratulate me, saying, "You did the right thing, Noah. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As for Ben, he avoided me entirely after the ruling. I didn't expect him to pay the full amount right away, but Marcus assured me we could enforce the payment plan if necessary. More importantly, I felt like I'd taken a stand, not just for myself, but for the principle that people should be held accountable for their actions. The repair shop had already started work on the Mustang, and while it would never be the same, I knew it would be back on the road eventually. In the meantime, I tried to focus on moving forward, even as the family tension lingered. It wasn't the outcome I'd hoped for when all this started, but it was the best I could do. After everything Ben had put me through, it was time to take a stand. Filing the lawsuit felt like stepping into uncharted territory, but I knew it was the only way to make him take responsibility. The mounting evidence in my favor gave me hope, and I prepared myself for what was sure to be a grueling process. Marcus, my lawyer, was determined to build the strongest case possible. He reached out to everyone involved and dug deep into Ben's history. That's when Ellie, Ben's sister, came forward with information that added a new layer to the case. We met at a quiet coffee shop, where she confessed her frustration with Ben's lifelong habit of dodging accountability. "Ben's always been like this," Ellie told me. "Mom and Sarah enable him. Every time he screws up, they sweep it under the rug. I think it's time someone called him out." Ellie described incidents from their past that painted a clear picture of Ben's reckless behavior. From borrowing and damaging friends' cars to ignoring responsibilities at work, he had a pattern of carelessness that couldn't be ignored. Her testimony was a turning point, offering insight into the root of his actions and reinforcing the idea that this wasn't an isolated incident. Then came the discovery of the security footage. Marcus had tracked down a homeowner whose camera captured the crash. The footage showed Ben driving at an irresponsible speed, swerving erratically, and ultimately losing control of the car. Watching the video made my stomach churn, but it was undeniable proof of his recklessness. Adding to the growing list of evidence were the screenshots of Ben's social media posts. His captions mocking me and the crash were presented as clear indicators of his lack of remorse. Each post added weight to the case, showing not only the financial damage he caused but the emotional toll as well. The evidence spoke for itself. By the time Marcus compiled everything into a detailed presentation, even I was shocked by the sheer volume of proof. I realized just how far Ben's actions had gone beyond a single reckless decision. They reflected a pattern of disrespect and carelessness that had been left unchecked for too long. When the judge reviewed the surveillance footage, it was clear that it played a pivotal role in solidifying the case. The video captured every detail of Ben's dangerous driving and left no room for interpretation. Combined with Ellie's heartfelt testimony and the undeniable mockery of his posts, the case against Ben was airtight. The verdict came down swiftly. The judge ordered Ben to pay $175,000 in damages, including the full cost of repairs, the diminished value of the car, and compensation for the emotional distress his actions had caused. While I was relieved to have justice served, the weight of the financial and emotional toll still hung over me. With insurance refusing to cover the damages due to the car being taken without my permission, I had no choice but to pay $15,000 out of pocket to begin the repairs. It was a significant financial hit, but leaving the Mustang in its wrecked state wasn't an option. Each payment I made felt like a painful reminder of the trust that had been broken. The impact of the judgment rippled through the family. Aunt Linda was furious, claiming I had destroyed Ben's future, while Sarah made it her mission to defend Ben at every opportunity. On the other hand, Ellie, Uncle Mike, and a few others quietly supported my decision, understanding that it was necessary to hold Ben accountable. As the weeks went on, Ben's reputation began to crumble. Friends who once laughed along with his antics started distancing themselves, and his usual bravado gave way to silence. The fallout was a clear consequence of his actions catching up with him. For the first time, Ben was facing the reality of what he'd done. Months later, Ben surprised me by writing a handwritten letter. It was an apology, raw and unpolished, but sincere. He admitted to being reckless, selfish, and thoughtless, and he acknowledged the pain he had caused. "You were right to take me to court," he wrote. "I needed to be held accountable, even if it took this to make me realize it." While I appreciated his effort to make amends, the scars of his actions remained. Forgiving him was one thing, but rebuilding trust was another. I knew our relationship would never be the same, but I took his letter as a sign that he was starting to understand the weight of his mistakes. Over time, I worked to regain my financial stability. The Mustang, now fully repaired, was back in my garage. It wasn't the same as before, but it symbolized resilience and the hard lessons I'd learned. Eventually, I decided to sell it and use the money to buy a new car, a sleek, modern vehicle that represented a fresh start. Driving down an open road in my new car, I reflected on everything I'd been through. The journey had been painful and exhausting, but it had also taught me invaluable lessons about standing up for myself, setting boundaries, and the true cost of trust. I was ready to move forward, leaving the past and its wreckage behind.